Let's take a look. What am I doing? I am streaming. Hooray. I'll go tell the world that we're streaming, or that I'm streaming. You're probably not. Streaming Unreal Dev Basic Terrain Stuff. Paste. That's not the address. That's the address. All right. So I figured out some how terrain materials work in Unreal. It is radically different than it works in Unity, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the reason it is so strange and different, it has good reason. So we're going to try and work on creating some terrain materials. Now, I can't imagine that most newbie developers go through this. I have to imagine that they just copy some pre-existing material from Unreal. Like there's an Unreal sample project, and I imagine they just use those. Those materials don't happen to be in this, and I don't really feel like going and getting them. But what I do feel like is working on the materials themselves. It sounds like it'll be kind of fun. You can see what we've got here is this really stupid looking green plasticky thing. If you were here when we left off last week, you'll know that that's not what it looked like last week. Last week it actually looked pretty decent. But last week was a material. And this week we need to have all sorts of things like rock and grass and stuff. So that's what we're going to work on. We're using this material I've cleverly called terrain, and I've gone through a couple of very basic tutorial sort of things. We've got this additive layer system. This is, I believe, the old way of doing it, because that's not how they recommend you do it anymore. Now they seem to recommend that you do some terrain blending. Why is it not searching for anything? Oh, it's called landscape. My bad. Terrain layer blending instead. The terrain layer blending allows you to blend all this stuff without needing to go into details like chaining it together like this. So we're going to try and create some nice layers for ourselves. We're going to start with the most basic layers, and that's going to be dirt and grass. So to do that, we're going to just hit this plus button, put in a dirt, and hit this plus button and put in a grass. And you can see how that creates a dirt and a grass input here. Now these are weight blended, which I think means that I can just paint them. They are a little bit more complicated than that for reasons we'll get into later. But first, let's see if we can make it work. So I got ground, but I'm using gravel, and what I really want is some non-gravel. I don't think we've got non-gravel here in the default. I think we've just got gravel and grass, the included textures I'm thinking of. Either way, we can just drop these into their layers like this, and then out to the base color. Now, I believe that this will work, but it's going to look awful. Let's find out. Wow, it is taking its time there. Here we are. Here we are. You can see this question mark. That was a layer that doesn't exist anymore, so we'll just delete it. Pow. This black streaking, that's where that layer was. You can see it's no longer there, so it's a little bit confused. This layer info is what really confused me for a while, because everywhere else in Unreal, this plus means add a new entry into an array. And here, it means choose the kind of setup you've got. So I'm not sure why they did it like that. I'm not sure why it wants to save it into that other directory. Presumably what happened is I got the actual geometry of this object in the wrong directory to start with, and now it's like whatever. But we'll go ahead and try and figure it out. So if we just paint some dirt on, you can see how we're getting some fun black panic lines and stuff, but we'll just sploop over that. There we are. How exciting, right? So if we take a look, why is it moving so damn slow? Come on, give us some speed here. There we are. Still haven't figured out all of Unreal's shortcuts. Let me make sure I've got the right thing selected here. There we are. So if you take a look, you can see we've got this really obvious repeating grass and repeating gravel texture. Even if we were to rebuild the lighting, it's not going to help any because we don't have any normals. We don't have any variation in terms of roughness or anything like that. So it's going to feel like a very, very, 2002 style terrain. Also, the splotch size is really, really small. So it repeats really, really frequently. That seems kind of strange. So my assumption is that I'm going to have to change the layer UV setup so that it uses a much wider UV set, because that is ridiculous. If we hit play, it does no change. It still looks terrible. You can see how it repeats every meter. That's obviously much smaller than the intention. And the reason for that, I think, is because we are using these landscape chords. And these landscape chords appear to just be defaulting to meters. Mapping type auto, a custom UV type, mapping scale 0. That doesn't seem right. Why would a mapping scale of 0 be the thing? Let me just take a quick little look. Unreal layer chords mapping scale, because I'm pretty sure that's what I need to change. But it's a strange thing for it to be at 0 if it's a scale, right? If it's a scale, it should be at 1. Applies uniform scaling to the UV coordinates. A uniform scaling of 0 should be nothing. It should be empty. That's weird. I don't really understand what's going on here. If we change it to 1, I wonder what'll happen. Hit save and then take a look at the change. Maybe it's one of those things. Yeah. So my assumption here is that it is actually defaulting to 1, in that if it's 0, it changes to 1. It doesn't let it be 0 because that doesn't make any sense. That's kind of my assumption. So I've just boosted it to 2. Yeah. So it was 1. It was just showing it as 0 because why not, I guess? There we are. So now the repeat is a little bit less egregious, and we'll work on it even further a little bit later on. First, I want to introduce some variety to the nature of this. What we really want is to have it not be made of plastic. So there are a couple of things we can do for that. So one of the things we can do is, let me just delete this texture sample for now. Move this off to the side a little bit. Sorry, I'm kind of still setting up on the other screen, so it's... if we just copy these, we should be able to really easily replace them with the normal maps, because I chose 2 things that have normal maps. But the thing is, I'm not sure... This doesn't appear to have a normal in pipeline, so my guess is that we've got to duplicate the entire blend element. The thing I'm hoping for is that it doesn't... See, I'm going to be changing it so much. I don't really want it to... I don't really want it to be one of those things where I have to change it in both places. So I'm hoping that... I don't know if this is going to work. I'm coming here off of half of a tutorial because the tutorial was like broken into 3-minute chunks with a full minute of that being, if you like this video, please... Oh, God. And so I never really got any actual value out of that. So I'm kind of just working off of some half-assed ideas. I should probably go ahead and just start up the other project, the demo project, and use that. But we'll try this way first. If we take a look at the, if we take a look at the layers here, you can see that there is no option to have multiple inputs for different textures. So things like specular and roughness and metallic, those don't seem to have any sort of inputs from this same pipeline, which means that the layer blend, there's like going to be several layer blends, and I'm not sure how to keep them all synced up without just continuously dragging and dropping. We'll see. So now that we've got the normal map, it's already noticeably less shitty, but some of the values are still pretty crap. For example, the grass is very shiny. So what we're going to want to do is introduce a roughness setup for these. And I guess we're just going to keep duplicating the layer blend, but this seems like folly because if I change this layer blend, it doesn't change the other two. So I'm a little bit concerned. I don't know how to delete things here in Blender yet. Blender, Unreal. How do you get rid of something? Okay, well, let me look that up. Unreal, delete entry in array. Removing index 0. How do you remove anything? Array nodes. No, that's not the same thing. So this isn't an array, according to... It says it's an array. Well, that's annoying. It's one of those things where someone has been using Unreal, probably knows exactly how to do it. But the only option I seem to have is to add a new element or to delete everything. Neither of which is even vaguely correct. Well, in this case, we can just delete it, duplicate it again. But the point here is that since these don't have synced up data sets, I'm going to be using them all independently. And whenever I edit one of them, it's going to be the same. It's going to be different. So I have to continually edit and repaint all of these, plug everything back in. That seems like it's a huge pain in the ass. There's got to be a better way, because what I really want to do is sync up this layer setup so that all three of them share the same layer element. I have a feeling that this is something that's fairly straightforward in reality, and I just don't understand it yet. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and put that into roughness, and what we're going to do is we are going to have the const height input here. I think that's not what we want. Const height input. Only used if height input is not hooked up. I think that's only actually useful if we're using a height blend, and at the moment we're not. So I guess we're going to have to use a vector 1. See, here's a constant 2 vector. It's not called a vector. It's called is it called a float? I see float 2s. All right, let's manually search for it. It's one of those things where it's called something. It's just called a constant. Okay, that's fine. Just call it a constant. So if we have an amount of roughness, we can bring it in at 0.3 for the dirt layer and 0.9 for the grass layer. I don't know, something like that. And if we hit save, that should make the grass not quite so shiny. Oh, but it made the dirt super shiny, so I guess it was defaulting to 0.5. So this looks like mud rather than dirt, which is actually what I'm going for. I want it to be mud, because it's the sort of thing you don't want your mech to run on. The texture isn't quite right for mud. It's certainly not gravel. I don't know why Unreal called it gravel. It's called tea gravel or something similar. This is absolutely not gravel. It does have some stones in it. I guess that's why they call it gravel. Either way, what we're going to want to do now is... Okay, so you see that flash that we got looking at the grass? See that? I'm not sure. It might have been a flash just from the paint. Woo! So something is going on with the road. The road material has changed, and I'm not sure what it's changed to, but it appears to have changed to something with metallicity and smoothness set to maximum. And wow, that is the worst reflection simulation I've ever seen. Congratulations, I guess. There's something wrong with it. My guess is that it's related to not having the light map built. But either way, we're not looking at the road right now. We're looking at everything else. And what I want is for this grass to feel a little bit more poppy. I don't want it to be quite that smooth of a changeover. So we're going to just do a couple of things to try and make it pop. First thing is we're going to try to use a noisy paint here. Oh, it should be grass. Grass. So here you can see that with a noisy paint, we're painting in according to a noise map. And that means that we're not just filling the entire area with grass. And you can see this edge. This edge is no good. And this is one of the things that I like about what I saw of Unreal's approach. You don't need to have them blend like that. That's not necessarily the only way to have it happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and use a different style of blending, which is called a height blend or an alpha blend. I don't know which is which. We're going to try an alpha blend first, I guess. Well, the alpha blend didn't create another... Let's try the height... So in theory, what happens is the height map, we can use this, although I think we're going to want to use it the other direction. And in theory, what happens is this moderates the edge so that we get the grass sticking out above the dirt. But it looks like it broke everything instead, which is not terribly surprising, I suppose. Why does this still have a stone? It looks like it undid all of our work. What's going on here? In theory... Oh, is that because there's a stone layer? If I'll just delete that. So I didn't expect that to break everything. This is one of the situations where it's not super clear what's going on. So if we take a look at this, you can see that what we've got here is a very, very shiny ball. I'm not really sure why it's so shiny. This looks like the road surface, so maybe the road is also set to this material. It shouldn't be, but let's just take a quick little look. If we select the terrain... there should be a spline editor. There it is. So here's our spline editor, and we want to just select everything here. And here you can see the there are 3 layers. They're just 3 different varieties of road. But the road meshes on this variety, they're not using... Here, I'll show you. They're not using a reflective material. I mean, the material is shitty, but it's not a mirror. So at some point, the material of these is being overridden by the local terrain. Now, I did see that the terrain had some ability to override, I should call it landscapes, had some ability to override these materials, but I thought that was for the local pod, not for, well, it doesn't matter, we'll figure it out later. What I don't see is any sign that it's trying to paint these materials. Well, let's go in and switch the material back to being a... is it because some of these are... Is it because they're desynced? Is that what's going on? Well, let's resync them then and see what happens. And let's make this metallicity 0. I should have 0 metal throughout. I'm not sure why it is set at 1. Look, even with 0 metallicity, it's still metallicity 1 in the preview. I just don't understand what's going on. I don't think that helped. No, it didn't seem to help. What if we rebuild lighting? I may have to... Yeah, so I'm going to have to give you a waiting screen here and create a new project. Sorry, it wanted to finish building the lights. New project. Games. There should be a mountain tutorial. I don't see it. So those are the templates. I don't... Is it not a template? Is it like a project? So the only project we have is the one I just created. If we go to the marketplace, there might be some free ones, but this is strange because they were like very specifically talking about a demo project, and I figured I'd just be able to get it. Let me take a quick little look here. I'll bring you back since there's no reason to keep you waiting, I suppose. You can see my vast experience with Unreal. No, my computer died, so that's why that's that. So basically, I noticed there was a... If I look this up here, Unreal Mountain Demo Project. Landscape Mountains Project. Da, 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 da. Apparently nobody liked it. Maybe that's why I can't find it. Let's just search for Unreal Example Material Terrain. It's not called a terrain, it's called landscape. Creating a landscape material. I think this is where I just was doing it. Yeah, so they recommend the landscape content example. They want the forest ground, the grass ground, and the noise. I don't really care about that. I just want the structure that they're using. And they set it up pretty much the same way I'm setting it up. A little bit more complicated because they're adding some normals together. It's nice to know you can do that, I suppose. And then they're adding layer blend information. And they have two different layer blenders, one for the base color and one for the normal, and they're not synced. So my assumption here is that I'm doing it the right way. That's a little silly, but okay. Whatever defloats your boat. But I can't figure out why I can't paint it anymore. My presumption here is that I somehow damaged it. Let's go ahead and switch it back to being a weight blend. And you know what? The preview is set to 000, and that's probably why it is silly looking. So we're going to just set that to a preview of dirt. That's definitely more in tune with what we were doing. But we can do the checking at this stage to try and figure out what's going on. Let's go ahead and save that, because I think what's happening here is that the layers aren't working anymore. I somehow busted them. I didn't change any layer names. Yeah, so now they came back, you see. This is weird. So when we changed it to a different blend, it got real upset. Well, let's experiment with that some more. Why not? So the idea here is that I want the grass and the dirt to have a different way that they cross each other. Let's try an alpha blend. So if we do an alpha blend, then in theory, it uses the alpha coming off of this, but we're not sending it the alpha. We're only sending it the RGB. Can we send it the full set? We can. Might as well do that with both, I suppose. The problem is I don't think that grass has an alpha. I didn't make it, so I don't really know for sure. Well, the good news is it didn't break. And the bad news is there's no sign that the grass has an alpha. If we increase the preview weight of the grass, well, putting it at more than 1 is obviously wrong. 10, that's exactly what the grass should be set to. So here you can see this is what the grass might look like. I guess we'll switch it back to being a ball. If we lower the preview weight down to 0.5, not 0.5, just 0.5, you can see that what we have, actually that's pretty close to what I want. But that's not how it looks in the game world. So what I want is the grass to be above mud when it's at less than 1. And my guess is that it's just a little bit too subtle to notice on the world map. So my assumption here is that this texture sample, this texture here, is in fact, it does in fact have complicated alpha data in it. Source file. Well, it's nice to know that Kendall Tucker has donated his grass texture to us. It's also a little bit funny to know that he puts it on his desktop. That's not very professional of you, Kendall. But we also know that it's here in Game Starter Content Textures. I'm going to go ahead and open this up in a editor just to see what the heck's going on. Give me a second here. Show in Explorer. Oh, it's a U asset, so I can't open it in anything. Sampler type. Well, it's fine. I suppose that's what I'll get. Well, let's take a look and see whether or not we can actually see this happening. The thing is, I sort of get the feeling that that's not what's happening. I sort of get the feeling like I've misunderstood what I'm looking at here. So the real problem is that I can't see. There we are. So it's definitely a blend. I'm not convinced that it's doing what I want it to do. It doesn't feel like the grass is interspersed with mud in any way. It just feels like it's a smooth blend, even though that's not what the sample showed. What the sample showed was pretty good, but here I don't really see that happening. It looks like just a smooth blend. So my assumption here is that it's not doing what I want it to do. What I want it to do is take the... so from an alpha blend, I can switch it over to a height blend. And I'm pretty sure a height blend is what I want, because I can set the grass to have a height offset based on the alpha value of the texture. And the idea there is that the grass will... parts of the grass that are opaque will pop up, but I don't know if the grass texture has that information. It may simply be that it doesn't have that detail, so it can't do this. What we could do, however, is drop in, say, green, just to see whether or not this even works in the first place. All right, so if we're using green, you can see how that radically changes what's being considered here. We're at 0.25 grass, and you can see there is almost no sign of any grass at all. If we bring that up to 0.5, it looks like it's a smooth transition again. Maybe I should just use like a noise? So the reason that it looks a little bit weird is because we're not using this height on the other layer setups. We might as well try it. We'll go over here and do this with a height blend. And then obviously if we do the same thing on both, we'll get something that's not quite so silly. Oh, but the example weight is different. Okay, so one of the problems we were having is simply that we had two different example weights. Alright, so maybe that was the issue. So here you can see what it looks like at 0.5 with blue as the example. There is a little sign here and there of grass, but barely any. And so if we were to change that over to the alpha layer, it looks like the alpha layer is a flat 1 to me. I don't see any signs that this is doing anything. Well, we can go ahead and switch this over too, I suppose. Because we basically need a height map, right? If we're doing it. And the examples all show the height map being the alpha channel. This is pretty close to what I want right there. Let's see how it looks. It should break again, right? Because it broke last time. But I can't really tell what the alpha channels are on these because they're U textures or whatever, U assets. They're not pictures. It looks like this is much nicer, but it's not. See here how it's kind of just blending between the two again? It's not working for me. Let's use the A from the alpha from the mud texture. See whether that has a proper alpha, because it doesn't really matter which alpha we use as long as we use one of them. Oh, that's much better. Well, it's much different at any rate. Yeah, see here? This is what I want right here. See that? That's good. All right. So the problem was that the grass doesn't have an alpha texture in it, I guess. Or if it does, it's not really set up to use the elements that we wanted to use. So what we're doing is we're using the mud's alpha texture, and that makes the grass grow on the peak elements of the mud. I have a feeling that if we could open the mud in a image editor, we would see that it has alpha based on the height, and that's actually very similar to the color of the mud in this case, because presumably the cracks in the mud are darker due to being painted darker. But that's definitely much better. Great, perfect. So we're starting to get to the point where some of this is going to work out. Now, obviously, it looks awful still. We're going to want to work on that a little bit. But a big part of why that looks awful over there is because that's not how mud sits. Like, mud doesn't sit on the side of a hill like that. So, because it's painted stupid, it looks stupid, and that's no surprise to anybody. We're going to need to come up with a couple more textures, though. I really want a stony texture, and maybe we'll use like a... There's one thing I noticed. This crashes whenever I jump into this hole. Why does this hole crash it? It's very strange. Maybe there's something I don't understand, like there's a cutoff at 0 that kills something. I just didn't see it. I don't know. Either way, don't jump in this hole because it kills you. Like, it crashes the game. Fortunately, it doesn't crash Unreal. It just crashes the game. So I believe what's happening is your character is getting deleted. Either way, let's go ahead and do a little bit of work here. First things first, I want to get rid of these glossy hills just because it's really distracting to see them. They're not... That's not how mud works, so we'll just paint over them. Next, we're going to want to create some kind of stony element for our terrain. So if we look in here, let's go ahead and try and find a... First off, let's really pull these separate. There we go. Now, if we hit T and click, we get a texture sample. And in theory, we can choose a texture that has some stones. If we type stone in here, we see that there are some cobblestones. What does M mean? Metallic? I bet it's metal and metallic. We got some cobblestone rough. Unfortunately, it doesn't pop up any sample here. So I can't, like, see it, which is a little bit of a shame. So we'll just select it and see how it looks here. See how it's super, super square? That's not cobblestone. That is, in fact, just plain old stone. Brick, you know, it's not how cobblestone actually works. Here, this is more like cobblestone. So the only problem with this is that it's super colorful, but we'll use it for now. So if we copy paste that, we should be able to just go down to the N here. Boom. And we won't worry about the metallicity at the moment. So what we're going to need to do is add this layer to our layer set. So let's do that. And if we take a look down here, we can call this... We're probably not going to end up calling it... We'll call it pebbles. We're probably not going to end up using that material, that texture. We'll have to figure it out. And we definitely want to use a height blend for this. That's kind of the whole point. So we'll just drop that in. And we're kind of hoping that the height blend will work. We shall find out here in a minute. So if we put this in at 0.5, I don't see any sign of it. Okay. This is interesting. I can definitely see it. It's not doing what I thought it would do. One of the issues I've got with this is that when I drag the preview weight, it doesn't instantly update. It like sits there and thinks for a couple of seconds, and that makes it hard for me to tell whether the preview weight's doing what it's supposed to do. So if we were to set this to 1, then you can see that we're not getting what I really want to get. So this might be due to the way that weights add up. Because in theory, so in theory, all of the weights added up equal 1. So when we have a preview weight of like 1 and 1 and 1 and 1, that adds up to like 3 or 4. It's not quite right. So in theory, what we should be doing is testing it out like this, right? Where the values add up to 1. And you can see that what's happening here is that the grass is growing inside of the cracks for the most part. And that's what I want. I actually want it to not be the grass, but the dirt. Let's go ahead and bring that up for dirt. Nuts. Yeah, so the problem here is that that's definitely not... Is the cobblestone not alpha weighted? Did the people who put this together not have an alpha layer? I wish I knew what the alpha layer for these objects looked like. Because obviously, the whole point here is that I want this to poke out above first. I want the stones to be there first. It doesn't appear like that's going to happen, though. So, well, what did I call it? Pebble? So let's go down here. Can we copy? Copy. Paste. Hey, look at that. Oh, and it copied and pasted the links. Well, that's not quite what I wanted it to do. I'm not sure if that's better or worse than the alternative, but I guess it's better because we can just replace the pieces that need to be replaced. So let's go ahead and just save it and take a look here. So here's what it looks like. And if we take a look, we need to switch this over to weight blended. And for some reason, it's still in maps shared assets, which is not correct. And we should be able to now paint pebble. Let's take a look. Paint. Whoa! Well, we certainly painted something. That looks like it's painting grass, not pebbles. Oh. Well, that's interesting. It's painting pebbles, but it's not overwriting the grass. That's... Why is it so grassy? Oh, it's like really weird. This isn't the behavior I thought it would have. What the heck? So you can clearly see that what's going on is it is deleting the values for the pebble layer and replacing them with the dirt layer. So instead of painting at 0.3 strength, we're painting at something very similar to full strength, but it's full strength without any fall off. See that? For some reason, the grass layer gets along with both. But the pebble and the dirt layer fight. That didn't seem to change anything. Oh, so hold on. If I put this at 0, the layer here, you can see that not everything is the same. That's interesting. So I added in a layer up here because I thought that layers were what we were trying to use. But instead of getting the behavior I expect, I'm getting some much stranger behavior. Oh gosh, Unreal, what are you doing? Here you can see the road is now 100% pebbles. I think what's happening here is I have a default visual on the terrain. I just default a preview. And if there's no layer information, it goes to whatever the default is. And for the road, for some reason, it's decided that the road needs to have the terrain textures attached to it, and I'll look into that later. But for the rest of this map, I don't know why it is doing what it's doing. If we clear this, is that going to fix it? Oh, well, I'm going to send you back over to here while I try and figure out what's up with this. Well, I guess that Unreal is also just as confused as I am. I have no idea whether it's saved or when it's saved. I mean, I guess you should just go ahead and restore everything. Well, welcome back, I guess. So here we are again. We're back in a place where there were only 2 layers. This was back, but even though there's only 2 layer infos, we're getting the pebbles here. So that means that the material was updated and just the layers weren't. If we go over here into landscape, we should be able to paint mode. There we are. So here we can see there are in fact still 3 layers, and the trouble happens when we start to paint them. Okay, that's fine. I can create a new layer info. Could you create it in vaguely the right spot for me? That would be awesome. What? Oh. Oh, now it's working. So the problem there was that it didn't feel like working. Okay, so whatever. Just bring that down to something smaller. So here you can see at the edges, we've got the situation where the grass grows over the stones, but the top of the stones shows through a little bit. And that's more or less what I'm aiming for, but we have some issues here. For example, we can clearly see these strange little creases. And I think what that is that's the metallicity trying to keep up, the roughness rather. So if we open up the terrain value, we are missing the layer pebble from this layer blend. So we're going to go ahead and create it. And I guess we're going to create it manually in this case. And we're just going to go ahead and call it pebble. And the reason we're creating it manually is because I don't feel like height blend it. I don't feel like remapping all this shit. Now what I don't like is having this stretched out to so many places. I'm thinking whether or not, can I set a local variable? I've never tried to do this in Unreal before, so I'm not sure. There's no word variable. Basically, one of the things I use a lot is I set a value, and then I can pull the value up somewhere else without having to have these big, long lines going across the entire screen. And I'm sure there's a way to do that here. Excuse me. I'm sure there's a way to do that here. I just don't know it. Image, adjustments, landscape, lighting, material, math, max, misc. Oh yeah, stick everything in misc. Why not? If it was in misc, I didn't see it. Let's go ahead and just look for set. Set material attributes. Guess not. Okay, well someone might, I'll figure it out later. I'm sure that it can be done. I just don't know how. Either way, now that we've got that set up, we should no longer have that weird glittery edge. Because I think what that weird glittery edge was it trying to decide whether to use dirt or grass for its roughness. Yeah, see? So now it knows that it's not supposed to use much roughness at all. It's supposed to use that much roughness. So if we look over here at how the dirt works, you can see how that looks really pretty nice. The only issue is that this pebble texture is really crowded and repetitive. So if we look over at where the pebbles are, where did I paint them? Did I not paint them anywhere near here? Okay, well, where did I paint them? I thought I painted them right here, but I guess I painted them all the way over there. Let's go ahead and paint some over here where I can actually get to them. Let's make this 1,000 and just do some painting. Come on. That's interesting, the way that it's not really painting. It's doing some strange stuff here, even though we're not using a noise or anything like that. So I'm presuming that what's actually happening here is that the weight of a lot of this is not at 1. I don't believe the weight is normalized. I believe that it is capped at 1. The weight is capped at 1. But it's not normalized, which means that if I paint something at 0.03% density, it will look exactly like a 1 density. And then the instant I paint over that with something else, it'll react and I'll get the other thing. But that means that all this grass is between 0.01 and 1 somewhere. And the result is this nonsense, right? So as I was saying, this pebble texture is like super, super repetitive. And it's certainly not what we're going to want to use. We need to either push it out even further using a wider UV map. In fact, this UV map doesn't look like it's the right size. Did I forget to hook the UV map up? Oh, I just didn't hook the UV map up. Give me a second here. Once again, we have to drag lines all the way across the screen because I don't yet know how to make that not be the case. There we are. That's a little better. So now it shouldn't be quite as nasty in terms of density of repetition, but you can see it's a very, very loud material. It doesn't look like a natural piece of pebble or anything like that. It looks like it's cobblestone because that's what it is. So what we really want to do is find a different set of materials that is a little bit more pebbly. So if we were going to look for that, we'll look up here. Yep, here it is. We're going to replace this with some other kind of stone. And I don't know whether or not they've got any that are just by default going to be viable. Got brick cuts and stuff. Let's try rock. Rocky. But you can see how that detail rocky doesn't have anything besides a normal map, which is kind of strange. Rock. These are rocks, but they're not really pebbles. They're just like rocks. See? It's not a pebble. It's just a plain old rock. That's actually a metallicity map anyway, but you get the idea, right? I mean, I can make my own. This cobblestone pebble isn't going to cut it. Hold on. I'm adjusting my mic. I'm sure you can hear it quite clearly. I mean, we're kind of just going off of what happens to have been included by default here, and obviously it's not a great surprise that there is no exactly what I need in the default textures. But one of the problems is I can't tell whether or not there's a texture that suits my needs because I can't get a sample here in this pop-up menu. It's really insistent on... here we are. There we are. That's better. So can I get this to just be a bigger option? It doesn't seem to have a scale option. That's fine. So now that we can see what we're doing, I wish I could get this to go away now that I'm finished with it. Can I... fuck you. So we're going to try that again. So here you can see like bricks. And maybe that would be fun for roads, but that's not what I'm looking for right now. And I can also do brick textures all day and all night on my own. I don't particularly need a canned texture for that. Well, that's interesting. This doesn't look like a metallicity map. I guess it must be, though. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da da da. What I'm also seeing is not a whole lot of like natural textures, which I guess makes sense because this is just a, when you start it up, it's just an arena. So it makes sense that there would be mostly man-made textures. We're definitely going to need this texture, these rocky textures. But I want a pebbly texture before I get a rocky texture. I don't think there is, like, pebbles in mud texture. I think that that's all we've got. This is, by the way, from MakeHuman, the pilot proxy that I put in the game. That's that texture. So, if you're wondering where some of these textures come from, most of them are the default project, but I also imported some stuff from MakeHuman. I don't see any options to get what I need. It doesn't exist. That's a shame. Let's go ahead and put in some stony textures, I guess. So I suppose we can leave it as pebbles for now. Later on, we might have to try and fix it up. But it has some value. It's just that it is really loud, like super duper loud, and that's not really turning out very well. But if we're careful about it, we should be able to use it as kind of a highlight element. The only problem is that being really careful about it might be quite challenging. So if we were to go into smooth here and just kind of smooth these away. Ooh, well, the smooth brush does not behave like you might hope. Okay, that's good to know, I guess. So if we take a look at how the pebbles look at this stage, you can see that they look pretty reasonable. And what we're going to want to do is come up with a rocky scree, a rocky landscape that that even at 100% opacity looks natural. And right now this does not look natural. This part might be okay because it's like a rise, and you can see how people might have a rise made out of stones. But by and large, we're going to need to be a little more careful. Let's go ahead and create another layer. I don't know. This seems a little strange. Is this really how people do it? Just like create 15 layers and go for it? It seems overly complex. And I mean, when there's no help synchronizing these different weighting systems, it seems a little strange, doesn't it? Well, let's go ahead and put in another layer. Call it stone. And of course, we're going to want to do that with the height blend again if we can get away with it. So if we move over and just create another texture sample, we can drop this in. Whoop, and drop this in. Get a big fat error because we haven't actually chosen anything. So if we take a look at these rock textures, this basalt rock is pretty decent. I think that's what we're going to end up using. The problem is their rock textures look an awful lot like dirt textures. Either way, let's go ahead and punch this up. Yeah, that's probably going to be fine. And then we're going to have to add that same entry down below here. Can we copy just the entry? Let's find out. I actually can't tell. It does seem to have copied just the entry we wanted to copy. That's pretty good. Either way, we're going to need to copy this, paste it in, bring it down. It's a normal map now, so we're going to choose the normal map section. There it is. Drop that normal map in. Ah, ah. Boy, this would be a lot easier if... it's got to be something I'm not understanding. It doesn't make any sense for it to be like this. Well, either way, just going to go ahead and copy in here as well. Paste. And layer none. Height pebble. That's strange. Didn't take this time. Did I copy something without realizing it? I guess so. It doesn't matter. We'll do it manually. Grind. Thank you. So if we come down here, we need to create a new material layer. Of course, it needs to be moved to a vaguely useful location. Then we can click on it and paint it. Ooh-ah! There we are. So if we bring down the radius and then bring up the strength rather significantly, this should be something that looks okay on hills. Oh, look at that. It didn't... Der fuck. Does that look like stone? Does that look like stone to you? Because it doesn't look like stone to me. Oh, this is that same problem, isn't it? Did I discover a recurring problem that's going to just constantly stab me in the ass whenever I make a change to a material and crash Unreal and then force me to do a whole bunch of repainting and shit? Because I'm not too happy about that. I guess we'll save everything. Yeah. What? Okay, that was weird. Yeah, so this is doing the same error. So it doesn't look like there's any reason for me to continue doing this on stream. If it's going to crash continuously, I don't particularly want to try doing that on stream. So I'm going to go ahead and just sign off here. I'm going to look at a couple more tutorials, and you can also tell me if I'm doing something that there is like a much better best practice for. I definitely want to know. I also want to know what's up with this road, because I didn't tell it to change the material of the road to the terrain material, so I'm not sure why it's doing that. Maybe I accidentally told it to override it and something. I guess I can check that before we finish off here. So if I hit the select button, you can see how there's an override material, but it's not set. And if we go over to the splines and we select one, there's no override material here. Not that I can see. There is one, but it's set to null. So it should be using the same material. Don't know. Alright, well, see you around, everybody. Have a good one.